On today's show, contenders or pretenders of the Eastern Conference. Do the Milwaukee Bucks have what it takes to upset the Boston Celtics? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time because, look, I don't know about you, I love going to live events. It could be sports, could be going to a baseball game, basketball game, could be a concert, whatever. There's nothing like it, right? Being in that live atmosphere, it's incredible. And Game Time is the best way to do that. It's the best way to buy your tickets for any kind of event. And Game Time even has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers. Look, and I don't know about you, my least favorite thing when I'm trying to buy tickets usually is you're going through and at the very, very end of the process, you get hit with like the digital handling fees and the service charges and all that. You don't get that with Game Time. They give you their all-in price up front, so you know exactly how much you're paying from the very beginning. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Bucks, Camille Davis. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Bucks. Here as we are tackling contenders or pretenders of the Eastern Conference. So Camille, let's start right there. Why should the Milwaukee Bucks be considered legitimate contenders going into this next season after a pair of pretty disappointing first round exits?
One word, and that'd be stability, is the word I would use for this season, is why the Bucks should be looked at as a contender. Last year was a year of a lot of upheaval, a lot of change. I mean, the Dame trade did not even happen until right before training camp started. There was a coach swap in the middle of the season as well, plus some poor health down the stretch for this team. So assuming that, they're all going to be healthy, being able to go into training camp, knowing who your coach is going to be, knowing your other teammates, it should go a long way for this team because the talent on the team, I think, is good enough to get them to that big game.
Continuity is going to be, it's always a big factor, but it's especially going to be an important factor for this Bucks squad. Absolutely. When you look at just the star duo, right, of Giannis and Dame, what did we learn about that duo this past season?
But they still needed to figure out how to work with one another. That was two alphas coming together, both who are used to having the ball in their hands a lot. So really learning how to play together and develop some synergy. I think what you saw a lot of last year was a lot of your turn, my turn, when it came between Dame and Giannis. And I think a summer of them understanding how they're going to be playing together, knowing the system with Doc Rivers, should go a long way. I think there's a lot of potential for that duo to be even better this upcoming season.
Now, when you look at some of the key, losses, acquisitions, obviously losing Malik Beasley, starter, a big-time piece for this Bucks team, that's a big hit. But then you also add a guy like Gary Trent Jr. How do you kind of evaluate or weigh that loss and that addition?
I think that every addition the Bucks made this offseason is actually an improvement over the guy who they are replacing. And there's no disrespect to a Malik Beasley, but Gary Trent Jr. can come in and do a lot of the same things that Beasley did when it comes to that shooting prowess. Plus, Gary Trent Jr. has, I think, a higher defensive upside than what Malik Beasley was able to provide. And then you have somebody like Tayshaun Prince coming in, or Taurean Prince coming in.
I was about to say, Tayshaun Prince making a comeback? Let's go.
Wrong Prince.
All good.
But yeah, with him coming in and replacing pretty much that Jay Crowder role, there wasn't a lot that the Bucks got out of the Jay Crowder last year. So having Prince come in, be able to be that three and swing small ball four should go a long way for them with the defense and the shooting as well. And then, of course, you add DeLon Wright, and you get that defense coming off the bench, which is something the Bucks were missing, which is why they went out and got a Patrick Beverley. So you get a little bit younger, and I think you get some better defense as well.
What do you look at as one advantage right now that Milwaukee has that no other Eastern Conference contender can say that they have?
I feel like the Bucks are under pressure in a sense because they are a team that, as you mentioned, flamed out in the first round 2 years in a row. But I think what's working to their advantage is that they're also under the radar. which sounds like a weird juxtaposition to be like, yeah, you got pressure, but also you're under the radar. But with what Boston did as defending champions going into this next season, plus the moves that Philly made, the trades that the Knicks made, a lot of attention has been around those teams. And I mean, even Orlando picking up KCP, the Bucks didn't have one of those offseasons that was really flashy or a big swing. So I think for them coming in under the radar and feeling kind of doubted, you've heard Dame mention that. And Giannis making a little joke like, no Christmas game for us? Like, really? And I think that's going to actually help them, give them a little chip on their shoulder to come into the season and really try to prove some folks wrong.
When you start looking kind of up and down this Bucks squad, what could you identify as a major weakness, a major point of concern going into this next year, aside from health, right? Because you can make the argument for health for any team in the association. So aside from health, what is one major weak point that should have Bucks fans maybe a little bit concerned?
My biggest concern is actually like just the big rotation, because there are only three like true bigs on the roster. I mentioned Prince might play some small ball four, but you're looking at Giannis, you're looking at Brook, and you're looking at Bobby Portis. So like if anything happens to any of those three guys, or if things just don't work right, if it's a year of decline for Brook Lopez, that changes the equation a lot for the Milwaukee Bucks, and there's no other like really big on their roster to pivot to. So I would just say like the bigs on their roster, making sure that they're going to be a fit for what Doc Rivers is trying to do, and then just having that synergy as they go, because again, they're kind of thin at that position.
What do you think right now is maybe the most kind of underrated or underreported storyline concerning this Bucks team as we approach this next season?
It's a great question. I think one would just kind of be Damian Lillard. Like there's been a lot of conversation around Dame if he's lost it and how he had a down year, so on and so forth. But there was just a feature on him in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel where he was just talking about his off season and the camp and everything like that. And he was saying like, I don't understand. I don't think people understand how big of a difference this off season will be for me. Having an off season where I know where I'm going to be. Dame is really the linchpin, I think, for this upcoming season for the Bucks. And if he can really unlock that and he looks a bit more like the Portland Dame that we've seen, although in a different role, I think that's going to be really big for the Bucks going forward, especially the mentorship he's going to be able to bring as well to the roster with AJ Johnson on the roster now and some other young guards that can stand to learn a lot from one of the best point guards the NBA has seen.
Do you view the Bucks right now as possibly the biggest threat to the Celtics? And if not, who do you think is the biggest threat to the Celtics to come out of the Eastern Conference this next year?
I think the Bucks match up really well with Boston. I don't think that that's unfair to say that they are the biggest competitor to Boston. They just didn't get a chance to meet up in the playoffs last year. In addition to that, the Bucks were unhealthy. But if you look at the regular season between those two squads last year, outside of I think the first game where the lead got out of control and the Bucks made a furious comeback, the Bucks were right in that, blew Boston out themselves one game, where Boston sat their starters the whole second half pretty much. And then the last matchup between the two where Giannis got hurt, the Bucks were handily in control of that game. So I do think the Bucks match up really well with the Celtics, especially given the fact that they have a little length and size on their side as well.
All right. Last thing I got for you, Camille. How would you power rank these four teams? The Celtics, the 76ers, the Bucks, and the Knicks. Go.
Celtics, number one, for sure. And let me just be clear. These are not my predictions for how the standings will shake out coming the end of the year, but just how I see these teams, I would go Boston, Milwaukee, New York, and Philly. I just think that Philly's going to have a little time where they're trying to gel together. But the Nova Knicks, I mean, that in itself is going to be like a case study on chemistry.
Yeah.
Just given how much that these guys know each other, what they're willing to do to play with one another. So I'm really high on the New York Knicks going into the season.
Can the Milwaukee Bucks be the team that upsets the defending champion Boston Celtics and make it out of the Eastern Conference? How do they stack up with the rest of the contenders in the East? You're going to have us covered for all that and so much more over at Locked On Bucks. Camille, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
For sure. Thanks for having me.